Hey everybody, it's Kneecap here, and in this video, we're going to be talking about a question that I continually see popping up everywhere in all kinds of different World of Warcraft communities, and that is, are there too many versions of World of Warcraft right now in existence? The problems that this causes, the good things this causes, all these types of things. I don't normally give a ton of commentary, but because I just keep seeing this pop up, I thought I would try to give my nuanced perspective, which is what I normally try to do, as well as, of course, my own opinions, because we all have those, and kind of just dive into this question and, see where we end up, essentially. So before we get started, we should probably just mention all the different types of World of Warcraft that currently exist. I think I got them all. So let's go ahead and go through this. So we have WoW Retail. That is obviously what I'm on right now. I'm a retail player myself. I love retail. I enjoy it. I enjoy most things about it, even some of the side things about it, things that other people don't necessarily care about. I enjoy. I'm a Mythic Raider. I'm a Rep Paladin, guide making extraordinaire. And I really enjoy retail. And if I'm biased towards any, it'll probably be retail because that's what I mostly play and that's what I mostly enjoy. I enjoy watching the MDI. I enjoy watching the TGP. I enjoy watching the Race to World First. I'm a retail person, right? Next up, we do have, of course, Classic WoW. Now, I also am a Classic WoW person, in being that I started playing in Classic WoW. I started playing in Vanilla. So, I started playing about a year and a few months after WoW came out in early 2006. I really loved it. That's what made me fall in love with the game, like the whole world and everything like that. When I tried to come back for Classic launch, did not have as much fun with that experience. Did not even finish leveling in regular Classic, but it is what it is. I still like Classic WoW. I like that Classic WoW exists, but my experience with Classic WoW is mostly just from 2006 and any of 2007 that was also vanilla. But that's most of my experience with it. When it came back, like I said, I could not get into it. Was not having a lot of fun, honestly. We now have Classic WoW Hardcore. So this is obviously Classic WoW, but Hardcore. This is, of course, mostly popular in like streaming communities, and of course people who watch the streamers, and just people who like hardcore in general, of course, can like it too. But that's kind of like the big driving force behind Classic WoW Hardcore. I don't mind this mode at all, honestly. I got a 58 Paladin when it first came out. I died at 58, which just stunk, honestly. But I had fun getting there. And I have currently a level 40 mage on hardcore on the anniversary realms. And I just kind of got bored, honestly. I'm just kind of bored. Just sitting there at 40, bored, kind of, and kind of just gave up on it. But I like Classic WoW Hardcore. And I'm going to like most of these things. And, so that kind of hints where I might be going with this, but I see all sides of this issue. We also have Classic Burning Crusade. This I played a little bit more than regular Classic. I at least got to max level. I even started doing my professions and stuff like that in BC. So I had a lot more fun in Classic BC than I did with regular Classic WoW. We have Classic Wrath. Classic Wrath, I was playing very much. I was actually raiding in Classic Wrath. I was trying to parse and doing everything. Unfortunately, Classic Wrath is towards the beginning of Classic Wrath is when my mom passed away, and I wanted to continue raiding with my retail guild and everything, and there was no way I was going to be able to do both with everything I was going through, and so I quit Classic Wrath. But for the time I played Classic Wrath, I enjoyed it very, very much. So if you're a Classic Wrath enjoyer, I see you there. Classic Kata, I did not play Classic Kata. I have no interest in Classic beyond Wrath. To me, it's not Classic. After you get past Wrath, it's just reliving the expansion, which is fine. If you love Kata, I actually liked Kata too. If I want to be completely honest, when Kata was, of the time period, I enjoyed Kata very much. I had a lot of good memories in Kata. We will have Classic Mists of Pandaria coming soon, so that'll be another game mode. We'll probably not play this either. I always joke around. The only expansion I ever quit playing during was Mists of Pandaria. So, not that I've never had my sub expire, but, I prolonged didn't play during Mists of Pandaria. I played at the beginning of Mists of Pandaria, and I came back at the very end of Mists of Pandaria when, Warlords was going to come out. And so I'm not a huge fan of Miss Pandaria, so I wouldn't come back for that anyways. But it is better than what I gave it credit for back in the day. Now that I'm a little bit more cultured in World of Warcraft than maybe I was back then. But yeah, I'm not a huge fan of that. So, if you're a mop lover, which a lot of you are, you can hate me for that, I guess. Season of Discovery. So Season of Discovery, I enjoyed Phase 1 a lot when it first came out. I was trying to actually discover the runes and have fun with that. I did not enjoy Season Discovery after that. I've heard that this final phase or these final phases are actually pretty fun and pretty good, but I could not get into it pretty much after that first phase. The first phase was really fun. I loved unlocking all my runes, the discovery part of it, Season of Discovery, right? But then after that, I just didn't like it that much, honestly. It was too much like Classic, but then just with like random extra spells and random people tanking, like warlocks tanking, and I don't know. For me, it wasn't the best thing in the world, but I understand why people like it. And of course, Season Discovery is supposed to be like a testing ground for like a Classic Plus, which of course could just render all of these other classics unneeded if they ever did a Classic Plus, which would settle a lot of the issues, because you can see that most of these issues there's a million different versions of Classic out at the same time. We also have limited time modes. So that's remixes. So far we've only had Mists of Pandaria remix. Now I mentioned I didn't play much in Mists of Pandaria, so I actually enjoyed the remix because I got to go and get all the achievements and get all the transmogs and stuff that I never got, in the mounts that I never got, because I have I'm not a huge collector, but I have a lot of the stuff from every other expansion except for Mists of Pandaria, and so this allowed me to get a lot of that stuff, at least everything that was available from Mists of Pandaria. That Miss Pandaria remix. So I'm a big fan of the Miss Pandaria remix. I hope they do other remixes. I would love to see a Burning Crusade remix. That's what I've said on my channel before. That's where I would like to see that. And then of course we have Plunderstorm. Plunderstorm is one of the most divisive things ever. Just because I'm mentioning Plunderstorm right now, there are people that are hitting dislike on this video right now because I mentioned Plunderstorm. Plunderstorm is super divisive in World of Warcraft. I don't know why, but it is. I love Plunderstorm. I'm not going to apologize for that. I enjoy it very much. It's not even really World of Warcraft. It's just like offering you another game to play inside of your World of Warcraft thing. You can even queue for it in the game now, right? And like, it just offers you another kind of little PvP game to play if you don't like traditional WoW PvP, which I personally have grown out of. I used to like WoW PvP up until Kata. I really played a lot of PvP and through Kata. And then when I came back after MoP into Warlords, that's kind of when I faded away from PvP. But, it's a PvP mode to play that I do enjoy, that's in the Warcraft universe, even though it's not really World of Warcraft. I'd rather play a MOBA. I'd rather play a shooter personally. Like, so whether that's a Marvel Rivals or an Overwatch or a Halo, even like any of these games, or Fortnite even, right? I like to play those kinds of games for PvP and not so much old school World of Warcraft PvP. So I like Plunderstorm a lot. And so most of these you're going to see that I liked, right? That I went through here. So let's now talk about the issue. So the issue is that a lot of people are saying that there's just too many modes in the number one thing. Let's go with the number one thing that I'm hearing. And that is that there's so many modes that the player base is fractured, right? And I do get that. It's the best way I can put this is it's like sports, okay? Now, I don't mind sports. I don't follow them much anymore. But I grew up liking sports, playing sports, all that kind of thing. But there is kind of like a pejorative way to talk about sports in like gaming communities, and they call it like sports ball, or are you watching the sports ball? And I kind of like that term for this. It's kind of like sports ball think. And we see that with anything nowadays, where there's a winner and a loser. So whether that's sports or politics or anything else, like I said, if it has a winner and a loser, there's very like tribalistic tendencies, which is kind of like sports ball thing. The penalties thrown on the other team, it was a great penalty. Penalty is on my team and the game is rigged. And that's kind of sports ball thing. And I think that's kind of a big issue here. And so a lot of it is you want, and it's natural, it's human. You want your version of the game that you like to be flourishing. And you worry that if there's other versions of the game that are better or as good, then people aren't going to be playing the version of your game. It's an MMO, so if people aren't playing it, then the game dies or whatever, right? You know, World of Warcraft's died a million times over, even though there's 75 versions of it now. And, you know, people have been talking about it dying for 20 years. But people are afraid it'll die, and someday it probably will die, right? Maybe it won't. Maybe it'll just go on forever, but it's likely going to die someday, I guess. Maybe not, but you know, that people are worried about that, right? And I would say you can't really worry about that. You're not designing the game. You know, at the end of the day, it sucks if your favorite game dies or whatever, or nobody plays your favorite game anymore. But it doesn't take away from the memories that you had. Would be try to be what I say to console somebody or whatever. And so you see like retail players. I see a lot of retail players saying retail is the only real version of World of Warcraft. Everything else is a waste of time. If classic people want to play WoW, then they need to learn how to like retail, or they can go play a different MMO. We need to stop with the classic stuff, put all the devs on my version of the game that is the best version of the game, right? The real version of the game, and make my version of the game better. Because and then of course that leads into if there is a bug or a flaw in, let's say, retail in this case, what that we're talking about, it is attributed to there's too many devs doing the other versions of the game, and therefore that's why my version has a bug and stuff like that, right? And again, that's very human response. Some of that might even happen. Some of that might even be true. In other cases, it wouldn't be. The game had bugs before there was ever a classic. The game will have bugs if they cancel classic, right? It's never going to fully go away, but it does make sense to think that way, in my opinion. So I do understand that argument of the devs or whatever. The argument that I don't get with is like the sports ball one, where it's like, no, my version of the game is the only one, and if there's any other ones, then it's bad, basically. The classic WoW one is actually a little bit different. Classic WoW people do not like retail. Like people who love classic WoW typically do not like retail, but most of them aren't like, well, we need to delete retail. The closest thing you'll get to that is they need to make a WoW 2, and retail stops development, and WoW 2 is closer to classic, but but it has like some nice upgrades of retail, like UI adjustments and like some of the stuff that they've put into the game for retail. Like you can have that in WoW 2, but it has to be closer to classic in terms of gameplay and you know play loops and everything like that. And so normally they're not saying to get rid of retail unless they're saying the WoW 2 thing of, you know, halting progression on retail and turning into and going for a WoW 2 instead. But that's not the only take from the classic community. A lot of times the classic community is just like, there's too many different versions of classic. It should just be, you know, there's people who say just it should be classic BC, classic Wrath, and of course regular classic. And then there's people who say it should just be regular classic and classic hardcore. And there's people who say there shouldn't even be a hardcore, it should just be regular classic, and that's all there should be. And in that case it's kind of true, first of all, but that is like a sports ball thing. It's like, well, my version of classic is the best version of classic. There's people in the BC classic who say the same thing. People in the Wrath classic that say the same thing. This should be the classic. This is the best classic. Look, this is the peak of rating. This is the peak of PvP, whatever. And, you know, because the classic player base is, you know, by definition going to be a little bit smaller, you know, when you fragment them across different versions of the game, including Season of Discovery, which is still classic, it's just classic with trying some new things out, right? When you fracture your player base like that, that is kind of true, because you get to numbers to where you can't necessarily find groups, especially like, you know, all the servers have coalesced over time, and, you know, you have everybody on one server, hopefully, or close to it, and then you can kind of still do stuff. But yeah, it becomes rough. Whereas on retail, everything's connected anyways. Doesn't matter. Retail is completely dead right now in any terms of the word. Like everyone's kind of waiting for 11.1. But if I want to, I could just join and get a Mythic Plus group right now. I could PvP right now. I could find a group to do a random achievement right now. Like I don't have to worry as of right now, right? This could change in the future or whenever, right? But as of right now, I don't have to worry about not finding players to play with. Whereas on certain classic eras, certain classic realms, that is a real issue. And so I understand being worried about that. And so you have this whole thing where our player base is too fractured. We need players. We need more players on this all together, playing together. That's what an MMO is. And like I said, I totally get that. But again, I think it is a little bit sports ball. Like you have to respect that other people like different things than you, in my opinion. Obviously, I guess you don't have to, but you should. I guess is what I'd say on that. When it comes to the limited time modes, most people like these. Would be my general consensus here. Most people like Mop Remix. People like a Legion remix. I want the Burning Crusade remix personally. I think that would just be so cool. Um, and so most people liked it, but there are people who like, again, and this one is mostly the dev thing. Like, I'd rather have the devs work on retail than remix. I'd rather the devs work on classic than remix, or classic plus, or the next version of Season of Discovery, which a lot of people are hoping is going to be, classic plus or whatever, or like an expansion to classic. What Burning Crusade is, but like a new, a reimagined version of that without going through the dark portal, basically. And so a lot of people hope for that, and they're like, well, I'd rather the devs work on that. So you see that. For Plunderstorm, I already kind of mentioned it. It's kind of like an anti-PvP thing mostly. I don't know why, because it's just fun. I don't think that they put a ton of dev time in it. If you play Plunderstorm, you can kind of see that they don't put a ton of dev time into it, but it's still really fun. It's really simple. It's just like this cool battle royal. There's like a big tournament. It might even be today when this video comes out. There's like a big creator tournament. That's going to be super fun to watch. There's duos, there's trios. It's just a fun thing, and I don't get the hate for it. I already said that. And so that's kind of all the perspectives that I can think of, right? That's all the perspectives that I've heard, at least. Now, if you have other perspectives I didn't mention, I'm not giving your perspective enough credit, whatever, feel free to comment that below. Send all the hate my way, all that kind of stuff, for me not knowing your perspective. But those are kind of the perspectives that I've heard. So my overall take is this. I'm a retail player, so I'm biased towards retail. Retail, I haven't noticed anything really too bad from all these different game modes, right? The biggest argument would be, well, the classes aren't designed up to my liking, or this dungeon could be better, or we're getting 5% less dungeon updates that maybe we would get if the devs were, not working on classic stuff. And I get that. That could be true. But think of how many people are enjoying playing that classic stuff. And, we just have a couple more bugs than normal. Again, the game's never going to be perfect. No game's perfect. I can log on any game and there'll be some bug that annoys me. Pretty much, unless it's such an old game that it hasn't been updated. And so it's just the way it is or whatever, right? And if it was in a stable mode the last time it was updated, then it's just fine still. But as a game that continually gets updated, you're always going to find bugs in those games, no matter what game it is. Even if it's a brand new game, a really cool game, a game from a really good studio, like, it's always going to happen, right? Even beloved games have stuff, even like Elden Ring and stuff like that, right? Even that had some bugs and needed updates and stuff like that. And so, it doesn't matter what game it is, that's going to happen. And that's understandable, and that's great, and that's fine. And so if there's like a little bit more bugs, like, and by I mean a little bit, right? I don't mean a lot. If it's a lot more bugs, then that's bad. But if it's like slightly more than normal, and like a million extra people get to have fun or whatever, then that's great. Like, I'm all for that. What I personally feel is that I just want people to enjoy the Warcraft universe, because I enjoy it a lot, right? I went through all of those. I enjoy most of those things. I just like the Warcraft universe. I like a lot of stuff about it. I like the old lore. I like some of the new lore as well, but I like a lot of the old lore of it. I've read some of the books. Like, I'm all in on it. And I just want people to enjoy it personally. And that's kind of the way I try to look at things. That's kind of the way, that's kind of why I faded away from sports. I was a huge sports fan. All my family is sports fans. And I've faded away from it very largely. Ohio State just won the national championship. I was an Ohio State fan. I'm from Ohio. I didn't care that they won the championship, if I'm completely honest, because I just don't watch anymore. And I'm not saying that other people should do that. You can have a great life and watch sports, but I just didn't like that feeling of like rooting against other people, and like, I don't know. I just didn't like that anymore. And so I went away from it. So I have a little bit of maybe a unique perspective in that way, in that I don't like rooting for other people to fail. I don't like rooting for other people to be unhappy. Obviously I want to be happy. I do root for myself to be happy as well. And I think if retail ever got to a terrible state, if it got back to Shadowlands, I'd be like, hey, maybe we should move some of these classic devs back to retail. Maybe then I would be joining that if it was like in such dire straits. But it's hard for me when, class balance, people complain about it. Shaman's really strong right now, but class balance is on single target especially is some of the best it's ever been. raids have been amazing overall, especially as far as their tuning goes. The new raid renown system in 11.1 looks absolutely amazing. A lot of like quality of life things that keep getting added to retail, like that they're working on like the engineering end. The engineers are doing amazing things on retail, just making the game better, making it perform better. All kinds of great things that are kind of like behind the scenes that you might not notice unless you're doing some stuff at the high end. And ultimately, I think having these versions of the game is a good thing. I've laid out all the reasons why you can criticize having multiple versions of the game. I also laid out that all the classics might get condensed. They very well might do a classic plus, and if they do and it's decent, then everyone's probably gonna, all the classic players are probably gonna play classic plus. And guess what? A lot of retail players will play classic plus with you, and then probably go back to retail ultimately. But it's going to be like this big enjoyable thing if they do a good job with it. And so I think that's something to root for sure, and that'll definitely consolidate the devs a little bit more than what they currently are. Not again. It's also worth noting that there's not a ton of dev work being done on classic BC realms and classic Wrath realms and stuff like that. Whatever legacy era realms that they're keeping up or whatever. I don't even know if those exist actually, but I think they do. And so there's not going to be very many devs working on those, if ever, right? It's just kind of like making sure everything's maintained properly, and that's about it. So ultimately, I think it's something that people just kind of worry about because it's an MMO. They don't want their MMO to die. They don't want their version of the MMO to die. And people are always kind of panicked about this. They've been panicked about it for 20 years. I understand, but I would say to temper, because most of these versions of the game are doing very well. Classic Hardcore is super popular every time the streamers do their OnlyFangs. Classic WoW is super popular every time they reboot stuff for that. Like the old classic WoW people will remake their old guilds, and the band will come back together and they'll enjoy doing the same thing once again in their cyclical fashion, and that's great. The limited time mode, people are going to enjoy the next remix. People are currently enjoying Plunderstorm. Like all the modes are actually pretty good. Season of Discovery would be the only one maybe, but the people, like I said, the people who play Season of Discovery are saying that the current mode, the current update of Season of Discovery is really good. So I don't know. I think it's kind of all working out overall. I get the worry. I get like always wanting the best for yourself, for your game, but I think everything's kind of working right now, and we'll see. We'll see, right? If they try to keep doing this many game modes or adding even more, and like we'll see the quality dip severely, right? And so there's some retail players will say the quality's already dipped severely. I would just argue against that, and I would love to have a debate with that on somebody. I would love to have a debate with somebody on that about how far the quality's dipped, because I think people are forgetting that there's been problems for 20 years. Like that's just the reality. But yeah, I think that's a good place to end this one. Just kind of on a positive note. Most of the game modes are good. If whatever game mode you like, you're probably justified liking it. Hopefully you like one of the game modes if you've watched this far of the video at least. But yeah, as always, I do ask you to please subscribe to the channel because that helps me out a lot. And other than that, everybody have a good one.